Did you know that 2 out of 3 people who've had work done are not happy with it? Either they got ripped off, job wasn't done on time, they didn't really need to get the work done, they were sold a bill of goods, the list goes on and on. The construction industry is the most complained about nationwide, and the reason most of that happens is because most people don't really have the information they need when making these decisions. And if you think about it, your average roof is going to cost upwards of $12,000. That's a lot of money. So what I've done is I've put together a list of things to look for so that you're armed with all that information, because most of the people that are coming out to your house to give you that information and give you an estimate are either commission-based or they're selling for their business, which means they're making money off of it, and they're probably not going to be unbiased. So what I've done is I've put together a quick little checklist for you so you're armed with all the information. The link's in the description below if you want to download that. First and foremost, roofing is pretty simple. There's some things, just warning signs to look out for though, to see how your roof's holding up over time. And the good news is you can do all this from the ground without getting a ladder or anything like that. You can do it yourself in about 10 minutes. So the first thing you got to do is just walk around the outside of the house. The number one key indicator, the first thing you want to look for is like granule loss. So shingles are made up of, they're laminated together of layers, okay? And what happens is over time it gets really hot in the summer, cold in the winter, those layers expand, contract, the granules can start to fall off and the shingles delaminate. So one of the earliest indications of like, hey, is my roof failing, is what we call granule loss. There's little granules on top. It's little pebbles made of limestone that over time start to run off. The less that you have on there, the less it's going to repel that water. So look in your gutter downspouts. If you're looking from the ground, you can get a camera phone and zoom in sometimes, or binoculars. If you're not seeing, or you're seeing big splotches up there, that's probably a really good indication that, hey, the shingles are starting to break down. I need to pay attention to this roof, and perhaps I need to get it replaced. So the second thing you want to look for is wavy or curled shingles. So again, we get really hot days in the summertime, and the shingles, you'll actually start to see them curl or cup. And that's just like when you put a fresh piece of bacon in a frying pan, the heat, what's it do? It makes the edges curl up. Same thing happens with your roof. When that happens, that's a good indication that, hey, the shingles are breaking down, they need to be replaced. What oftentimes happens when those shingles do curl up like that, wind-driven rain can get underneath of them, or worse, when you get a big windstorm, it rips it off and then sends it down into the neighbor's yard. If you're missing shingles again, chances are you're going to need full replacement. It's not just going to be a repair at that point. The third, and sometimes the most obvious thing you want to watch out for outside, is moss or algae growth. So a lot of people don't really understand what that is. They think it's coming off the trees. It's where you see staining on the roof shingles, like black, like looks like running mascara, or green moss growing all over the place. What that is that's an indication that that shingle's no longer repelling the moisture from the surface of the shingle. The black algae growth on there is plant life. So those shingles, the pebbles in them are limestone. What it is when they're no longer repelling the water anymore, it's growing algae, just like a stone in the woods where you'll see, moss growing on it. It's the exact same thing. When you start to see that black, that indicates that that moisture is no longer repelling off there. It's sitting on that roof to where now plant life can grow. The trouble with that is that's telling you that the shingles are no longer repelling the moisture. They're able to collect that moisture, and it's going to cause problems down the road. Now, if it turns into like clumps of moss, that's a really bad sign. That means that that algae has taken root, and it's actually growing a root system into the shingles. That can tear it up and cause leaks and stuff. Definitely going to want to pay attention to that. Now, depending on the severity, there are things you can do to treat that. You don't necessarily right away need a roof replacement, but that is a definite indication that the shingles are breaking down, and they need to be addressed either with a good cleaning from a professional company, or perhaps there are other problems with the roof and you do need to get it replaced. Last couple things on the outside. So just remember, water is going to find its way into your house when 2 different building materials meet. So on your roof, you have different protrusions like pipes coming up through. Those pipe collars, just take a look at them. Those break down a lot of times. That's where you're going to get leaks coming in. Or you have valleys, right? Those, if there's a lot of moisture sitting in there. Flashing, like around your chimney, that's metal flashing. That's to connect the shingles to the chimney itself to prevent that water from coming in. Oftentimes that'll separate and that'll cause a leak right there. And you don't always see those right away because it's right up against the chimney, runs all the way down to the basement. You may not even see that water get in the house. So just keep in mind when you're looking around the house, look at all those different points. Maybe you got a wall coming into the roof that's a roof wall intersection. Those are going to be areas that are very vulnerable to having actual water get in. Now, the other thing that you want to look for in the wintertime in Michigan, we have what's called ice damming. It's a very common thing. 90% of the houses I get into don't have enough insulation, and believe it or not, insulation is part of your roof system. Why? Well, what that insulation does is if you don't have enough, If you do have enough, what it's going to do, it's going to keep the heat inside the house. If you do not have enough, it is going to let that heat escape into the attic. It's going to melt the snow at the top of the roof, and then what's going to happen is where your eaves are or down on your gutters, that'll stay frozen. That's what's called an ice dam. So all that water that's running on the roof literally hits that ice at the bottom of the roof where it stays frozen, and then it backs it up underneath the shingles. Now you have water coming in your roof. The last thing you want to have to deal with is a leak in the middle of winter when you can't get it fixed, when it's 0 degrees outside, we can't install the roof, and you got an ice dam up there and nothing to do with it. It happens all the time. So definitely when we get in the attic, you want to take a look at the insulation levels to make sure you have enough. It's also related to ventilation. I'll get more into that here in a minute. But if you're having big icicles hanging out down by the edge of the roof and the rest is staying, thawed out, that's a key indication that you don't have enough ventilation, you don't have enough insulation. Both of things need to be addressed because they can cause major problems. The other thing is, if you are just seeing your rafters lines, like in the frost, that is another indication that you're not having enough ventilation or insulation in your attic, and that's something else you want to pay attention to. So those are some key indicators there. The last thing, and one of the most important things that's part of the roof system that most people don't think about, is actually your gutter system. So gutters are designed to get the water to run away from the house. Reason being, what happens is that water gets down in there. If you don't have the gutters on there, or if they're overflowing, that'll get down into the soil. It puts pressure on the foundation, can cause issues there, can cause leaks in your basement. We want to manage that water and get it away from the house as best as possible. So when you're walking around, you want to see, are the gutters attached to the house, or is there any separation? Look at the corners. Are they leaking? Are there seams in the gutters? Are there dips? You want to take a look at all that around the house. And then also to your downspouts. You want to have it at least 3 feet away from the house, good runoff. You don't want to have pooling or water sitting around the house in a rainstorm, so keep an eye on those things when you do have a heavy rainstorm. Make sure that you're not seeing the water overflow the gutters. You'll see staining on the gutters a lot of times, so something definitely to pay attention to when you're getting your roof done is your gutters, because that is also part of the system. We need to manage that water and keep it away from the home. Now, the biggest thing that I can tell you, if you're having a roofer out to your house, if they don't offer to get in your attic, and that's the number one test to see what kind of roofer they are, if they don't say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I need to get in your attic space to inspect, it's like doing an x-ray, that's a big red flag right there. I wouldn't even take an estimate from that person at that point. If you're able to, I highly recommend, there are some things you can look for in your attic. I'm just going to go over those really quick here. Just more warning signs, because I can't tell you how many times I've been on the outside of the house like, oh, well, roof doesn't look too bad, right? And then we get on the inside, and it's a complete nightmare. That happens often. So I'm just going to go over those things really quick for you so you have that on your checklist. First and foremost, it's pretty simple. Like if you're on the inside of your house, most of us have like drywall or plaster, right? If you're starting to see stains on the ceiling or on the walls, that's an indication of either a leak or could possibly be bad ventilation, and again, condensation, ice damming. Those things can all cause those stains. That's a big red flag if you're seeing that problem on the inside of the house. When you do get in the attic space, first thing you're going to want to look at is the attic's floor, right? So if you're seeing the joists, you need to have at least about 16 inches of insulation in there, or an R49 minimum code, and 90% of houses, so don't panic if you get in there and it's not, 90% of houses don't have enough insulation. And as I said before, if you don't have enough insulation, that's not going to keep the heat in on the inside. It's going to allow it to come up. It can cause ice damming. And not only that, you're paying through the nose with energy bills if you don't have enough insulation, because they keep raising those energy prices. And, that's just the reality of the situation. So we got to make sure we have enough insulation on the attic floor. Aside from that, the biggest problem I see with roofing in Michigan in general is our houses are at least on average 50 years old or so. Well, 50 years ago, they didn't understand the importance of ventilation. Most roofers, when they come out, they're going to talk to you about maybe putting a ridge vent across the top. That's exhaust vent, or maybe some can vents. That's not good enough. That's just the exhaust. So think of it like this. You can't breathe out if you don't first breathe in, right? So what roofers have come to realize over the years, and every single manufacturer out there now requires balanced air intake and exhaust. That is, you have to have enough fresh airflow coming up from the bottom to wash across the roof deck to exhaust the top. If you just have that exhaust vent across the top and nothing else, or even an attic fan or anything like that, that is not enough. It's going to create a vacuum situation in there. That can lead to a whole host of problems inside the attic if you don't have balanced intake and exhaust. Number one, the shingles are going to overheat on the roof deck, because that roof deck is going to get too hot, because what happens is just having that exhaust on the top, it doesn't have the proper airflow to keep that roof deck cool, which will cause the shingles to prematurely break down, and then you're going to have to replace them earlier than they need to. So every warranty is void if they don't have enough exhaust or intake and exhaust ventilation. Second thing is it leads to a lot of mold and moisture problems inside the attic. Think about it. Mold grows in a dark, damp area, right? If you provide 24/7 airflow in there, it's going to be a lot less likely you're going to have any kind of fungal growth taking hold. So, and that's the other thing. When you open that attic door, if you're smelling something that's musty or moldy, A, get out of there, but B, you're going to want to look up on the roof deck. Oftentimes you'll see a lot of mold growing in there. That's definitely a problem. That's going to need to be addressed. More than likely the roof's going to need to be replaced, and you're going to have some remediation to do at that point. But if you don't address the underlying problem, you have to, if you just put another roof on there, that mold's going to come right back. You definitely have to have balanced airflow. It's very, very important. It's the most important thing I can tell you when looking at this roof. Other couple things that when you're on the inside of the attic, look at the wood. Is it cracked? Are there holes? Or is there, pops coming off of it? Look down by the eaves, right? So in that wintertime, you'll see dark staining. Even in the summertime, you can see where that, if you are having ice dams, if you don't have enough insulation, you'll see dark staining in the first like 6 feet of that roof. That's definitely indicating a problem. And then one of the last things that indicates either lack of ventilation or lack of insulation is what we call cat eyes. So think about it. All your nails are coming through the roof. They're made of metal. So just like a can of Coke, if you put it down in the summer on a hot day and it's cold, it sweats. Same thing that happens in the roof. If it doesn't have the right ventilation or insulation, those nails that are coming through are really cold from the outside, and then the heat from the inside's hitting them. They condensate, and it's like having 10,000 little leaks inside your attic. And if that's not addressed, that can lead to more mold problems, as well as, wet insulation and problems along those lines as well. So just see, if you see these, what they're called cat eyes, they're little black spots around the nails. That's definitely an indication that you need to have that roof addressed. And that's definitely an indication of whoever you have do that roof, they need to address the ventilation and probably the insulation as well. Other things that can go on inside the roof are, you look at your rafters. So if you look at your rafters and you see a bunch of little amber balls, looks like sap coming out of them, that's what it is. It's from overheating. It draws that moisture out. The problem is that can lead to degradation of the strength of the rafters. And, just look at your rafters. Do you have cracks in them? Oftentimes also when you're looking at the rafters, you'll see like stains. That's usually leaks, because it'll run down the side of the rafter. It doesn't just drip necessarily. And then, if you do have a stain on your ceiling and you look up and you say, oh, well, now I see where it's coming from, because it could be coming from the top of the roof all the way down to the bottom, and you wouldn't know it. So those are just some really quick basic things that you can check out on your own. Again, the link's in the description below for my free guide. Download it. That way you can see exactly how your roof's holding up. And if you do have those problems with your roof, you're going to know what questions to ask when that person comes out, and, hold them accountable when they do come out to give you an estimate on your roof, to know exactly what's going on. Hopefully you found this video to be educational or informational, I guess. I am making my second video is going to be exactly what to do when you do need a new roof to get it installed the right way, and to actually have a factory-backed 50-year non-prorated warranty on it, with no matter who you go with on that. You want to make sure there's some things on that. So I'm gonna include that in my next video. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a great day.